Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to serve as chairman of Voices de la Luna Board of Directors, a quarterly poetry and arts magazine. We believe poetry heals minds and arts advance the quality of life. Voices de la Luna publishes a quarterly literary and arts magazine in print and digital formats. We stage free monthly poetry and prose workshops in local libraries and produce art therapy sessions in our various libraries. We go to Haven for Hope and help our homeless people to open their minds and write prose and poetry. We also give the writers and poets of San Antonio a platform to submit their work and hopefully publish as many pieces as we can. At this moment, I would like to thank our chairman of the gala, Dr. Angelica Jansen, as well as the honorary co-chairs, Dr. Wendy Barker and the columnist Kerry Clark, for their support of Voices de la Luna. Without them and editors and the board of directors, Voices de la Luna would not thrive. I thank you for attending and supporting this annual gala. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining Voices de la Luna at our 2021 gala. As the chair of our first virtual celebration, I am honored to take you through the program. Some will know me as the co-owner of the Jensen Paris Contemporary Arts Galleries, or as the former director of development at Our Lady of the Lake University, or as curator of several national and international art exhibitions and exchanges, as board member, or simply know me as a friend. As we as Voices de la Luna celebrate with this gala the power of the literary arts in our city, as we proudly and specifically present tonight the 50th edition of the Voices de la Luna magazine, we are equally delighted to be able to have a key figure in the arts, Dr. Ellen Riojas Clark, center stage, commemorating this important day. It was not an easy task to bring Voices de la Luna to the standing it has today. Not too many San Antonians believed that a poetry magazine had a place in our technology-driven world of today. As many of you know, our uphill battle is not over. This is one of the major reasons my dear friend, Dr. Ellen Riojas Clark, is the best and most knowledgeable individual to personify a fight well fought, a struggle leading to success, and an ability to disperse knowledge and help further individual abilities, regardless of creed and color, of course, and rightfully so. Being a Latina, she always was taken on task to do away with inequalities she saw done to people of her own cultural group. Wherever Ellen shows up, she demands respect. A native of San Antonio, this retired UTSA professor of bilingual studies leaves and left her mark on whatever she touches. During her 35-year tenure at the university, she published at least 5 textbooks, 4 cultural study books, over 200 academic articles, and mentored countless students and colleagues. For her cultural contributions to San Antonio, she was recognized with the La Prensa Outstanding Women in Action Award, and she is included in the San Antonio. She was recognized with the La Prensa Outstanding Women in Action Award. As she is included in the San Antonio Women's Hall of Fame, tonight we will add another award to her long list of accomplishments. What a woman to look up to. What a woman to have in our midst. Thank you, Ellen.
caricias gozando. Adiós y más adiós. Adiós, que te vaya bien.
In early 2008, Mo Saidi had just returned from Boston with a master's degree in literature from Harvard and was ready to embark on his post-retirement career. Having spent many years as an OBGYN doctor in San Antonio, he was ready to start a new phase of his life focused on poetry, literature, and the arts. He got together with his friend Jim Brandenburg, a certified poetry therapist, and together they came up with the idea of launching a literary magazine in San Antonio. As Mo said, if Boston could support poetry and the arts, so could San Antonio. They worked feverishly over the next few months, setting up a nonprofit organization and then publishing the first issue of Voices de la Luna magazine. The name Voices de la Luna is confusing to some people because it blends English and Spanish. But from the beginning, both Mo and Jim shared the vision of a literary and arts magazine that showcased the bilingual, bicultural nature of San Antonio. The original subtitle, A Quarterly Poetry and Arts Magazine, specified the nature of the new publishing venture. The first issue was published online in September 2008, and from the beginning, the editors were determined and successful at getting some of the finest poets and authors, not only in South Texas, but from throughout the country to contribute. That first issue featured poems by Naomi Nye, Wendy Barker, Larry D. Thomas, Palmer Hall, and others. The first volume, that is the first 4 issues, was published online and included works by Robert Flynn, Rod Carlos Rodriguez, Tom Keene, Bryce Milligan, Bonnie Lyons, Lahav Asaf Aljundi, and many others. The first volume of Voices de la Luna was so successful that the newly elected board chair, Dr. Harmon Kelly, insisted that the editors produce a print version to accompany the online version of the magazine. And so when volume 2, issue 1 was published, it appeared both online and in print. That issue also began the tradition of featuring striking art pieces on the cover. Volume 2 featured the work of poets and writers such as Carmen Tafoya, Carol Coffey Raposa, Carla Morton, Roberto Bonazzi, and Marian Haddad. It was also in volume 2, issue 4, that I first became associated with the magazine. Bob Flynn had introduced me to Mo Saidi at a meeting of the Third Monday Writers Group, an informal group of writers who met monthly at someone's house to talk and share a potluck meal together. Mo found out that I knew something about computers, so he recruited me to be the Voices technical editor. Little did I know then that more than 10 years later, not only would I still be involved with the magazine, but I would be the Voices editor.
I hope you enjoy this as much as I do, since I'm back to introduce my distinguished honorary chairs, UTSA Professor Dr. Wendy Barker and Express News columnist and member of the editorial board, Gregg Clark. We at Voices cannot thank both enough for adding substance and importance to our gala. Dr. Barker is a renowned chair for creative writing at UTSA, as well as a published poetess with her works translated into Hindi, Chinese, Russian, and other languages. Her latest publication, Gloss, was published in January 2020. Gregg Clark worked for Joaquin Castro's first congressional campaign and was former Mayor Ivy Taylor's communications director. He was inducted into the Texas Institute of Letters in 2017 and is working on his first anthology of Black Texas writers. Congratulations to both our wonderful honorary chairs.
Good afternoon. Ellen, congratulations for being the recipient of the Texas Voices Award, for being recognized for your intellect, your heart, your scholarship, and your love for life, your infectious love for life. Also, congratulations to Gregg for all the things that you've done over your career. And of course, congratulations to Voices de la Luna, Mo and Jimmy, for the publication of your 50th issue since 2008. This is one of the most important, best, essential publications in San Antonio. Mo asked me to read something, one of my columns. I won't read the entire column, but it's this particular column, I believe, fits this particular celebration this afternoon of words, of literature, and of purpose. And I think it also speaks to what Voices de la Luna has been doing since 2008, and what we are honoring Ellen for. And this particular column was about Amanda Gorman's inauguration poem at the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on January 20th. I won't read the entire column, just some excerpts. She will always be 22. Long after she surpassed the age of the man for whose inauguration she recited. Long after perhaps another young poet has spoken at her own inauguration. Long after she's climbed the hill that by then will be a mountain of accomplishments and accolades. Amanda Gorman will always appear in our minds as we first saw her. She'll forever be the 22-year-old who stepped out of the shade of relative obscurity to stop the world with a poem. At 16, this daughter of a single mother was named the Youth Poet Laureate of Los Angeles. At 19, while studying at Harvard, she became the United States' first National Youth Poet Laureate. Now she was doing what Robert Frost, Maya Angelou, and other inaugural poets have done, reminding us of the beauty, power, and necessity of poetry. In Ephesians 6:12, St. Paul writes, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." For nearly 6 minutes, Gorman, as poised and lyrical as her words, possessing a presence that amplified and deepened her message, wrestled with the world's ancient darkness and this nation's recent spiritual wickedness. She reminded us, we the people of this nation, of its unfulfilled promises and promise, and of our awesome capacity to love, be merciful, and be better to each other as we nurture the dreams of who we aspire to be, who we can be, who we truly are. Standing at the Capitol, Kamala Harris took the oath of vice president, looking like no other person who's taken that oath, while Gorman, standing in the same place, looked like the enslaved Americans who helped build that Capitol and the White House. Enslaved Americans who toiled to build the symbols of a democracy denied to them, but whose spirits gathered on those steps Wednesday to watch those two women stand on what they built, freeing their spirits to smile and say what they dared not say when they walked the earth. Black is beautiful. Black is power. Black is poetry. Black is love. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Barker, and I'm just delighted to be part of this wonderful occasion honoring Ellen Riojas Clark for receiving the Texas Voices Award. Ellen has contributed enormously to our community and all our communities, and I'm thrilled to see her so appropriately rewarded. But I also want to thank and congratulate Dr. Mo Saidi and all of the incredible members of the team of Voices for publishing the 50th issue of Voices. Voices provides an incredibly valuable service to our entire region. It gives voices to writers of all sorts, including many students. And I know we're all super grateful to Dr. Mosaidi and the entire team of the advisory board, the board of directors, and all the hardworking editors. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As for me, most of you know I've been teaching at UTSA since 1982, and though I'm partially retired, I continue to adore working with our students. And I'm particularly happy that we offer now a graduate certificate in creative writing. And I'm grateful for our terrific colleagues, Dr. David Ray Vance and Dr. Kimberly Garza, who we're thrilled to say has recently joined us. We're just so happy to have her with us. Until the pandemic struck, we had planned to feature Dr. Garza as part of our annual creative writing reading series. But since we had to cancel the series, we've now decided to host Dr. Garza for an online reading from her work on Friday, March 26th at 7. If you're not on my email list, email me please at wendy.barker@utsa.edu and I'll send you the Zoom link for her reading, which I know will be absolutely marvelous. She's already become a beloved, super valuable member of our faculty. Also very exciting, we do have, although we don't have all next year planned because we don't know quite what the fall is going to bring, but for the spring of 2022, we have, are you ready? Joy Harjo planned to read in the spring. So stay tuned. We'll get you all the information about hosting Joy Harjo. As for me, my 7th full-length collection of poetry, Gloss, came out a year ago from St. Julian Press. But I decided to read poems from my very earliest work. For some reason, I've been going back and looking at the first things I ever wrote and published. So I want to read the first poem I ever drafted as a poem. I've been writing since I was a child, but I didn't realize until sometime in the early 70s that much of I was writing was trying to be poems. Practice, I wrote early on in graduate school and took the poem to my wonderful mentor, Sandra Gilbert, who helped me with it and helped me from then on. And I want to read this little poem. It's real little. Practice. I'm sharpening my knives for cutting, cleaving through green peppers, opening their halves, crackle moist, dark, tiny white feathers, seeds clinging. This green meat will make good eating. I will swallow the seeds and grow wings. And I'll close with the first poem I ever published in Poetry Magazine way back years ago. This is called The Navy Blue Chair. It's included in my first full-length collection of poems, Winter Chickens, which came out from Corona Publishing Company in 1990. So again, Mo, thank you so much. And Ellen, congratulations, and thanks and congratulations to Voices. Grateful to all of you. So here I will be closing with The Navy Blue Chair. The navy blue chair wraps quiet in its smooth chintz, silent as a rabbit, as the black dazzle of midnight. Outside the kitchen, a Phoebe sits on 3 eggs while I rinse the omelet pan. The chair's fabric is slick as an egg. The chair knows nothing of bloodshed, has no need for language. Only there is something in the easy curve of the firm high back that might allow anything at all, hatching, feathering, rising through dark air with the lift of a Mozart sonata, the lilt of a perfect souffle. After the dishes are finished, I want to sit down. If I sit long enough in the blue chair, I may know when the phoebes young will crack through to the air, when the summer storms will break, when the clashing of flesh and beak, the loud pounding of hard rain will have to begin. So thank you all.
Hello, poetry and art lovers. Be sure to visit our online auction, see the bottom of the screen, and bid. You'll find a great mix from a week in Berlin to artworks by notable Texas artists, plus fine wine, jewelry, books, and personal services. Your tax-deductible donation funds art and poetry in our city. And if somebody outbids you, you get an email right away. Items will be delivered free of charge within Bexar County. Our auction will be open till 8 p.m. tonight.
Hello, friends. I'm so happy to be here with you, Naomi Shihab Nye, to celebrate Dr. Ellen Riojas Clark, winner of the Texas Voices Award. Congratulations, Ellen. Thank you for all you do for so many people. And to cheer for Gregg Barrios, friend of literature far and wide. We love you both and care for all of your work. And to celebrate Voices de la Luna, for its 50th issue, a remarkable achievement, bringing so many voices into the light of the moon and the sun. Thank you, Dr. Mo Saidi, for all you have done to encourage us, to hearten us, to connect us. You have given us so many more friends. And for you tonight, I dedicate this older poem of mine called Kindness. I wish you all literary kindness in all your days.
Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. He too was someone who journeyed through that night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.
What a wonderful privilege here to be together with you, Ellen. I always wanted to do it, and it's wonderful that I can present to you the Texas Voices de la Luna Award. You are only the fourth one to receive this honor within 13 years of the existence of this organization. And it's a well-deserved honor for you, Because when I talk to you a lot of times, in the beginning of this, it was so much more to tell about you, where you come from, etc., etc. So now, let me hear from you where you come from, where you are, what you are, Ellen.
Thank you, Angelica, and Voces de la Luna. Thank you so much for this award. It really signifies, I guess, not only my cultural life, but also my literary life, that of an academic, that of a writer, and that of just being a civic member of San Antonio. So why was I born here, and why am I going to die here? Because San Antonio for me reflects all the beauty of who I am. And who I am is a Mexican American. And so my city of San Antonio has that 300 plus years of Mexican history. So we're embedded in the cultural life, the values, and the traditions of life in Mexico that it used to be many, many years ago. So that's why I like it, because my daily life, from its food, from its cultural customs, from how we greet each other, how we talk, hablamos en español y en inglés, and we are just exemplifying all the cultural life of San Antonio, my beautiful city. So I think that being bicultural and bilingual gives you this added perception that you look at the world with a greater cognitive flexibility. So what my studies showed was those kids who are very proficient in 2 languages and in 2 cultures would rate a 5 on a linguistic test, but more than anything, on an indicator of giftedness, we're way up on the top. What that means is that being bilingual, you have bilingual brains, Angelica, so it allows you to see the world
Yes.
with added benefits. So our kids can do mathematics and scientific things at a much faster rate than monolinguals. That's one thing. But if you're bicultural, even though you might not be bilingual, and you are triple culture because you're German and Mexican American and US, is that all of that builds one upon one. So it's a cognitive flexibility that is enhanced by being bilingual and being bicultural. I thought that Maya and Miguel was one of the best things I've ever done nationally. I think the impact on children throughout the United States was incredible, because Maya and Miguel was aimed at what's called preteeners, 11 to 13, multi-ethnic, mostly monolingual English speakers, but it's centered around a Latino family. And so my role was to write all the scripts, 64 scripts, that dealt with the life and the lifestyle of a Latino family. And I think that that brought to the forefront and to all of the United States how we work with our children, how we eat, how we celebrate, etc. So it was a wonderful way to teach cultural literacy to all children. And you know what I thought that the children, monolingual white children, loved the most was that Abuela Elena would always call the children mijito and mijita. And they all wanted their grandparents to call them mijita and mijito, which I thought was a lovely, lovely cultural attribute that was extended nationally.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because Abuela Elena, right? Because you're not only an academician, you cut to the chase of everything. And that's probably also that you are not only have academic writings, but you also came to others, tamales. And so tell us about this. How did you get to that?
Sure. Well, you know, I've written, like I said, a lot of textbooks and a lot of 200 journal articles that have been read by maybe 100 people. But the book on tamales, I think, was read by thousands of people.
Right.
And that told me that the study and the exposure to the culture of Latinos was very important. So writing about tamales was an incredible, not just only a research thing, but how could I write it and put it in a way that general public would enjoy it and read it? And what was important about it was to know that tamales have been around for thousands and thousands of years.
God,
And we
yes.
use molcajetes
Yeah.
made from the volcanic rock. We use meat, and that could be venison, etc. But the most important factor was that of maíz, or corn. And corn was found in the Americas. So when you eat a tamal, you're eating tamales that are made from chiles, tomates, maíz or corn, all from the Americas. So we're eating a food that is many, many years in the making, thousands of years. And then the other is that to make tamales, you need to have collaboration, and you need to have your family, and you need to have your friends over, and you have to tell stories. So it's a wonderful way to have cultural literacy because it's all about storytelling. So tamaladas are fabulous in that perspective. But also, I did a book on Dia de Muertos and on the calaveras, which is also a unique thing that happens in San Antonio. And now I'm working on another book that you're going to love.
Oh, wonderful.
And that is on pan dulce. It's been 5 years in the making. It's going to be published next year by Trinity Press. But again, it is about a cultural food that is unique to Mexico and then spreads throughout the Americas. So I don't know if you know, but there are more than 2,000 names of pan dulce. So you know why I write about these things? Because they're fun and because I learn a lot and because it's important for my community to learn about their culture and traditions.
I'm Angelica Jansen. I'm the chair of the Voices de la Luna Gala for 2021. And I'm so honored and pleased that my good friend, Dr. Ellen Riojas Clark, is going to be honored. She will be the fourth honoree for our Voices. And it also is the same time that we have our 50th issue of the Voices de la Luna magazine. So we have lots to celebrate, and this is the award. The award, it's too great. I have to look at it all the time, and that's for Ellen. Thank you for being our honoree.
Oh, I'm Ellen Riojas Clark. Thank you so much, Angelica and Voices de la Luna. This is a magnificent, beautiful, colorful award that really reflects all of the diversity and work done in our 50th issue of the magazine or the literary journal. And I'm so happy that we're honoring Voices de la Luna on its 13th anniversary. I'm also happy that we are honoring a great friend, Gregg Barrios, who is a voice on his own in terms of poetry, playwright, and so forth. Again, mis gracias for this award.
Hi, I'm Sandra Cisneros, and I want to speak about my good friend Ellen Riojas Clark, or you might know her as Dr. Ellen Riojas Clark. And that's how she came to me when I just met her back in 1984. But she never was la doctora or call me doctor. And that told me a lot about her, that she was just Ellen. And from the very beginning, when I didn't have anyone I could ask for $5 till next payday, Ellen was there for me as a friend and most importantly as a supporter. And she believed in the vision that I had when I moved to Texas. I think it was very difficult for women to open their houses and hearts to me. And I have to admit, I understand now in the long view, but back then it was really hard. But one of those people who was very friendly to me and befriended me and supported the series and writers and invited the writers I brought to San Antonio to her classroom was Ellen. And she has always been a woman that has impressed me for her courage, for being a maverick, for being chingona, for being just someone who didn't act like anyone else. And, she was just a mountain mover, is a mountain mover. Even when she has a COVID going on, she's organizing politically. And I just admire her so much. She's brilliant. She's an activist. She's a beautiful spirit. She's kind. She is not xenophobic. She has been there as a witness. She's done so much. People don't even know. Like, she was back there when the visual artists, with the gay history, with the activists, with the old timers, with the newcomers. She's just has a person of like the open heart. And I'm very grateful because, coming from another town, from another region, being new to Texas, it's hard to break through the tribes in a town like San Antonio. But Ellen had always made me feel welcome. She's always been kind. And she's someone I admire so much for her courage, her vision, her love of her cultura. And she's humble. I mean, that to me is a true gift of a true leader. So this is to give thanks for Ellen, all my admiration, to thank her for everything she has done for our entire community. And she's done so silently and behind the scenes. And if there was ever going to be a statue created in San Antonio, it should be for Ellen Riojas Clark. There you go, Ellen. You are loved and admired by many, many people, but especially by me. Bye.
Hello. This is Bibi Saidi reminding you about the Voices auction. See the bottom of the screen. You can find some award-winning art to enhance your home. Especially in these pandemic times, we all need the joy and comfort that art can give. And remember, your donation is tax deductible.
One of the things that set Voices de la Luna apart from its earliest days of publication was its interviews with poets, writers, artists, and other important people. The interviews have revealed interesting aspects of the lives of the interviewees, and they've also provided insight into the creative process that goes on in the mind of a writer or artist. For example, an interview with nationally acclaimed author Sandra Cisneros, June of 2010, saw her discuss her first fiction collection, The House on Mango Street, as well as her interest in writing poetry. She also discussed the origins of her short story, Woman Hollering Creek, which was named after a creek that crosses Interstate 10 between San Antonio and Seguin. The following issue featured an interview with Carmen Tafoya, already a well-known poet and writer who would go on to become the inaugural Poet Laureate of San Antonio and later a Texas Poet Laureate as well. Carmen, a native of San Antonio, discussed writing in English and Spanish and what it means to be a Chicana writer. She also compared writing to the process of childbirth. Texas literary legend Robert Flynn, in his March 2009 interview, didn't compare writing to childbirth, but he did discuss how he came up with the ideas for his novels. He also discussed his academic career, which included teaching drama, playwriting, and fiction writing, but not literature, he says. Voices has featured interviews with many other notable figures over the past 10 years, too many to feature in the time allotted to this presentation, but I want to single out several for recognition. One of our early interviews, July 2011, was with a person who was not a writer or an artist in the traditional sense of the word, but a former medical colleague of Mo Saidi, Dr. Richard Becker, the founder of Becker Vineyards in Fredericksburg. He discussed the connection between his medical career, writing, and making wine. Voices has also published interviews with U.S. Poets Laureate, such as Natasha Trethewey, Ted Kuzer, and Juan Felipe Herrera, and many San Antonio and Texas Poets Laureate. We've also interviewed writers whose focus is something other than, or in addition to, poetry. including Nan Cuba, Louise Aronson, Amalia Ortiz, and Ruth Friedberg. Rounding out this overview of people interviewed on the pages of Voices de la Luna, I want to mention a few other people outside the traditional literary community. Ricardo Romo, president of UTSA and accomplished photographer. Carrie Clack, journalist. Ramiro Salazar, director of the San Antonio Public Library. Angela Covo, editor of Edible San Antonio. Mathu Sridhar, president of the League of Women Voters of the San Antonio area. And Troy Peters, music director of the Youth Orchestra of San Antonio. I can't end this discussion about interviews that have appeared in Voices de la Luna without mentioning my interview with artist Jim Harder in October 2015. At the end of an interesting but otherwise unremarkable interview, Jim threw in the detail that when he was an adolescent in 1954, living in Lubbock, he had seen a UFO, an experience that had completely changed his life. I can only imagine.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lorena Monroe. What an honor and a privilege it is to be right here at Bonita Productions with Dr. Carmen Tafoya. She is a writer. She has written over 30 books, and she has participated in many different things. She has been in national television, local television. Everybody that knows Dr. Carmen will get to know her better today right here at Bonita Productions. She's also a part of one of the most amazing nonprofit organizations, Voces de la Luna. And she's going to tell us a little bit about that today, about their event coming up, because she's very involved in that. And she's going to tell us a little bit about what is it that she is writing next for 2021. Dr. Carmen?
Thank you. I am delighted to be here with all of you and to be a part of this community, especially the literary and the arts community here in San Antonio. We're a very special group of people. You may wonder, if you're not involved in the literary arts, what relevance does this have to my life? And I'd like to share with you that I grew up right here in the barrios of the west side of San Antonio. I did not have much exposure to people with education. I didn't have much exposure to colleges. I had zero exposure to the concept of creative writing being taught anywhere. I didn't even know you could get a degree in that, because at that time, that was not part of what we were exposed to, what we were told about. But when people today ask me who my major literary influences have been, I tell them it was the viejitos in my neighborhood, the little old lady down the street who told the most wonderful story of La Llorona, the tío who talked to me about El Cucuy, about my father's stories about La Muchacha que bailó con el diablo, or my elderly aunt telling me stories about my great-grandfather and what he had done in the 1840s and 1850s right here in San Antonio. So I grew up with a sense of literature and a sense of history, and it gave me a sense of who I was and a pride in being Mexico Tejana, Chicana, Mexico Americana, being Mexicana de este lado, being a U.S. citizen, but of Mexican heritage. People say, you came from Mexico? No. Your parents came from Mexico? No. Your grandparents came from Mexico? No, I'm from right here in San Antonio. So how are you Mexican? Well, we were here when it was Mexico and before. And so I grew up with a kind of like growing up with a whole Mexican American Studies curriculum that was about me and my family and where we came from. That was our voice being captured. People need to hear their voices and their experiences captured. They need to see it written down. And a literary journal or a quarterly journal of arts and literature, like Voices de la Luna, gives us such a sense of seeing our own reflection and understanding our own lives, no matter where we come from or what we've been through or how diverse we are one from another. A literary and arts journal empowers us. So I feel fortunate to be able to help some of the arts organizations in town, and I feel very fortunate to be able to have been a part of Voices de la Luna for the last almost 13 years now. Voices de la Luna began in 2008. They're coming up on their 50th issue. And this will be a celebration that will be held in the voices of many of the writers and artists of the community. But this particular celebration will be honoring Dr. Ellen Riojas Clark. And I've known Ellen since 1975, when we were both doctoral students at the University of Texas at Austin. And if I had to say just one word that characterized her, I'd probably say chispa. Chispa, that spark, that fire, that love of life that cares about what's going on in the community and cares about what's happening in the arts and works to support them. And sure enough, Ellen has been so supportive of many organizations in town. You may think of her as part of the Libraries Foundation. You may think of her connection with the Tamaladas, with many of the cultural arts centers in town. But I also know that for Voices de la Luna, she has been critical, crucial, important, committed to fundraising, promotion, ideas, just all around support. And if I had two more words I could say about Ellen, I would say it's commitment, and the other word would be determination, because she doesn't give up. She goes at something and she goes at it 150%. On a scale of 1 to 10, she's at 15. This is the way Ellen works. And this is an organization here that really merits that kind of help. So I'm going to share a couple of poems that to me represent some of what Voices de la Luna is about, some of what Ellen's about, and some of what all of us here in this organization are about. You see, when I grew up in San Antonio, Mexican Americans weren't in the textbooks at all. I used to say that we were absolutely magic. We could walk right through the middle of an American history textbook and poof, just disappear. Because there was nothing about our existence. There was nothing about our cultural contributions. There was nothing in there about who we really are and what we have done and how crucial we've been to this community. And so I wrote a poem many years back, probably about 5 years before I met Ellen, about those obstacles, those stereotypes, those limitations on vision that keep human beings from seeing or understanding other people. And one of the great things about poetry and all of the arts is that it lowers the boundaries between people. It makes connections between groups so that we can understand each other better. And we can love and appreciate other people's cultures as well as our own.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for supporting Voices de la Luna, San Antonio's quarterly literature and arts magazine. Help me today in welcoming our special guest, Gregg Barrios, as he celebrates his 80th today. And after you meet him, you will see why he was named a cultural sage by our honoree, Dr. Ellen Riojas Clark. Gregg, welcome and thank you for joining us. We're so excited that you're here.
Gracias, Natalia.
Can you tell us a story of how you first brought literature to la gente, to the readers of Victoria, Texas? You told me once it started in the library.
I think my whole life begins in the library. My father made me a book case early on, and I would go to the library every day after school. I was still in the 11th grade, and the librarian would give me access to all the books, even the adult books. So I was surprised one day when they said, "We have to talk to you. It's something important." I was afraid that they were in trouble because they were letting me read adult books. Well, to my surprise, they said, the editor of the Victoria Advocates Fund section or feature section is looking for someone to do a local book review, so it will be part of what the community has to say about books.
And so what happened? They told you that they were looking for someone to interview and write.
Well, I immediately said, "Well, why aren't you going to review these books?" They said, "All we do is check books and check them out."
So you started as a book critic at the age of 16. And that's not all. Called South Texas Renaissance Man, whose work has recently been archived at UCLA, his legacy leaves no artistic stone unturned. He is a timeless and timely Chicano poet who pushes boundaries, cultural norms, and challenges the status quo as an LGBTQIA voice. He's a brave, trailblazing playwright, filmmaker, teacher, an artist who worked with Andy Warhol in his factory, a mentor of poet James Franco and many other writers, journalist, newspaper editor, and a music, culture, and literary critic. Currently serving as the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at the National Book Critics Circle Awards and the author of several plays, Gregg, I want to just stop and say, of all of your amazing accomplishments, some of which I've named and some of which I haven't yet, your experience and roles and accolades, which one stands out to you to be the most true to your mission as a writer, as that fire that was lit inside of you when you were a young boy?
I think that ultimately when I went to Los Angeles to become a teacher and a writer, I was able to get a job at the Los Angeles Times. This was for me, amazing. Here I was, this little Mexican boy who had served in the service, who had gone to college, and yet my future was still a mystery. When I got to LA, I found out that there were very few Latinos in the newspaper business. And this was the second largest newspaper in the United States. They hired me because, one, I could speak Spanish, I could write in Spanish, I knew the literature, and I knew the music literature as well. And so they gave me a job doing all of that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And we forget, Gregg, that your role as a veteran has been a huge part of shaping you as an advocate, as an artist, and as a poet. Your poetry has been published for decades. You're the author of La Causa, Puro Rollo, which has an introduction by the legendary Tomás Rivera. And your upcoming poetry is coming up in a collected works. Can you tell me about that project that's happening with Hanson Press, right?
Yes, well, actually, it's an anthology of the best of the 4 volumes of poetry that have previously been published. They are, also a new, exciting collection. So it's called My Life, the Poem I Never Wrote, Selected Poetry, 1967 to 2021.
Wow, I can't wait to read that, and so many more. There's plays that you're working on, including the story of Versace's murder, and this biography of Jose Carrasco. You've interviewed so many people, it's dizzying. Selena, Mike Tyson, Jose, Muhammad Ali. Sandra Cisneros has called you the Mexican Forrest Gump. But Gregg, what is it that you want us to know about you? What is it that you want to share with us today at this gala?
The fact that we are all part of what literature brings to our people, to everyone. And I think it's important that we nourish that in our children, that we make a library accessible to them. So someday, maybe they'll find you in that library and offer you an opportunity you can't resist.
That's so beautiful, Gregg. Thank you so much. You were a teacher, you've taught children, and you're still a teacher. You're a great maestro. Thank you for being a part of our time here today at Voices de la Luna.
Muchas gracias.
Qué lindo.
My name is James Brandenburg, and I am a diplomat and an analytical psychologist, trained in Switzerland, and I am a certified poetry therapist, certified by the National Federation of Bibliotherapy, Poetry Therapy. The Federation requires poetry therapists to have a background in psychology and in English literature. Dr. Mo Saidi and I were the original founders of Voices de la Luna. My contribution to the magazine was my interest in poetry therapy and my desire to implement the use of poetry therapy in the community. You may ask, what is poetry therapy or bibliotherapy? It is the use of literature, poetry, journaling, and other forms of writing to touch the soul of individuals and to help them to heal. Poetry therapy and bibliotherapy can be used as a tool to help individuals to heal. Let's speak for a moment about poetry therapy. One of the most prominent poetry therapists in the world is John Fox, founder of the Institute for Poetic Medicine. And he has written 2 books on poetry therapy, Finding What You Didn't Lose and Poetic Medicine. They contain creative approaches and exercises for use in poetry therapy settings. I highly recommend both these books. There are thousands of different ways to use poetry therapy as a healing tool. However, I will briefly share with you the approach I like to use when working with groups who are in need of opening up and healing. When I use poetry as therapy in a group, I like to limit the group to 8 to 10 participants. That gives each member of the group a chance to respond at least 2 or 3 times to the poem. I like to place the chairs in a circle and have each member face the other members as well as possible. I like to say to them that the poem we are responding to is like an additional member of the group. I try to choose a poem that fits to the makeup of the group. For example, if I'm working with a group of schizophrenics, I am careful not to select a poem that could set a person with this kind of illness over the edge. Therefore, the makeup of the group helps me to choose the appropriate poem. I usually ask each member of the group to read a couple of lines of the poem, and then I ask someone to read the entire poem. Then the participants have a chance to respond. I ask them to respond with their emotions to a line, a phrase, a stanza, or perhaps to a motif.
or perhaps to the entire poem. Responding to a poem in poetry therapy, of course, is different from analyzing a poem in an English class. I am more interested in the emotional level than I am in the intellectual level, although it is sometimes difficult to separate the emotional from the intellectual. The danger of the intellectual is that it can take us away from the heart and the soul and keep it up there in the head. I often say at the beginning, this is not an English class. I am interested in your emotional responses to the poem. Since having the poem there is like having another person in the room, the participants are uninhibited, and immediately it gets down deep. Generally, after a half an hour or so, after various responses, I will do a writing assignment. I give the participants writing prompts, or I ask them to choose their own prompt. Then I say, we're going to write for 7 minutes. And I will time you. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. I will stop you after 7 minutes. As you write, don't think, don't overthink, don't judge, don't criticize, don't evaluate, don't beat yourself up. Just let it flow as easily and quickly as you can. Whatever is there, let it out. We're not trying to create a masterpiece. We're just trying to get our feelings down. Surprisingly, the writing usually comes out in poetic form, and it has poetic qualities. I've been doing this for many years, and the process always works. After we finish the writing process, I ask them if they would like to share, and they share. They produce beautiful pieces, almost without exception. They don't have to share if they choose not to. This is the process that I have used over the years with lots and lots of success. Thank you.
Hello, poetry and art lovers. Are you sick and tired of staying home? Well, an elegant 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in the heart of Berlin is waiting for you till November 2022. That's plenty of time to plan a fun vacation with family or friends. Remember, it's tax deductible. Your donation funds sorely needed poetry therapy in our city. Watch the bottom of the screen and bid.
Throughout the first few years of the magazine's existence, all of us involved worked to improve it, both in content and in appearance. When I became editor in April 2012, I introduced the innovation of including page numbers in the table of contents. Actually, I think it was Carol Raposa's idea to add page numbers. With a purely online magazine, page numbers don't always matter. But since we had been producing a print magazine for a few years now, it was high time to make the content of the magazine easier to find. Much more important than page numbers in the table of contents, though, was the idea of having a theme for each issue of the magazine. This theme would give the editors and contributors an organizing idea around which to build each issue. At first, I thought we would alternate themed and non-themed issues, but it soon became clear that the themed issue provided an advantage that made attracting material from potential contributors easier, and it allowed us to plan ahead for future issues. The first themed issue appeared in October 2012, and it focused on the beat poets of the 1950s and 60s. We included excerpts from some of their poems and other writings. Copyright restrictions constrained us from including entire poems, and we also included new poems inspired by the beat poets. By now, Carol Coffey Raposa had joined the Voices team as poetry editor. She also served in the extremely important but largely thankless role of copy editor, a role she continues to fill to this day. Carol, who had become the Texas Poet Laureate in 2018, had published several books of poetry and innumerable individual poems, and she had connections in the poetry world that would prove vital to the growing reputation of Voices de la Luna. Voices had already attracted well-known and accomplished poets, but thanks to Carol's outreach to friends and colleagues, the quality of poems in the magazine began to increase. By 2017, Carol was ready to relinquish her title of Voices poetry editor, but we had to find the right person to take over the job. Our first thought was to see if Octavio Quintanilla was interested in the job. Octavio, a professor at Our Lady of the Lake University, was a rising star in the San Antonio poetry scene, as evidenced by his selection as San Antonio Poet Laureate in 2018. But none of us, including Octavio, was sure that he would have the time to fulfill the role of Voices poetry editor, so we offered him the role of guest poetry editor for a couple of issues. He knocked it out of the park. And in August 2017, Octavio became Voice's new poetry editor. At the same time, we welcomed Jasmina Wellinghoff, editor of San Antonio Woman magazine and now Arts Alive San Antonio, to become our prose editor. August 2017 was also the issue that introduced a new subtitle to Voices de la Luna, a quarterly literature and arts magazine, a nod to the fact that at Voices, we promote all types of literature, not just poetry. I want to mention a couple of other people who have made significant contributions to the development of Voices de la Luna. Jerry Robledo served for several years as associate editor of Voices, and Octavio, Jerry, and I sat down from time to time to discuss the future of the magazine and ways in which we could improve it. On one occasion, we met at the Cove on a summer Saturday with the temperature over 100 degrees to discuss the magazine, and we came away with ideas for improving the layout of the magazine, ideas that we've used ever since. I also want to mention the contributions of Andrea Kraus-Lozano, who, in addition to serving as assistant copy editor for the past few years, also suggested the idea of focusing a page or so each issue on an up-and-coming local artist, whom we call our spotlight artist. Finally, I want to acknowledge two special issues of Voices de la Luna. The August 2018 issue that highlighted public art in San Antonio, and the February 2020 issue, guest edited by Jim LaVilla Haviland and Moby Warren, that commemorated the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I can't wrap up this quick overview of the magazine without returning to the vision and ongoing work of Mo Saidi and Jim Brandenburg. Though their roles have changed over the years, both have continued to be intimately involved with the magazine and the organization that they founded, providing leadership and content for Voices de la Luna. Without their efforts, Voices de la Luna would not be the success it is today.
What an amazing gala this has been. So much talent, so many people that gave so much love. Thank you for making this possible. Thank you for all your love, for all your poems, for all your books, for all the writing that makes a difference. Thank you to all the artists that make a difference around the world. Thank you to Voices de la Luna for helping us to be able to share such a wonderful, lovely gala. Thank you to everybody that participated, and also thank you for allowing Bonita Productions to be able to put you on the spotlight. We are a local company based right here out of San Antonio, Texas. So please don't hesitate to contact us to help you and bring you up to the light, just like we did with Voices de la Luna. Thank you to everybody that made this possible. Hasta la vista.
It was a wonderful evening with all of you together, even though you were far apart, but next year will be in person again. But this was great, even though we had to do it over Zoom from the distance. I cannot thank anybody enough for all that have been said, have been done, and we had fun doing it. So thanks again.
And now we want to thank some very special sponsors of the event: Dr. Bruce Ackright of Northeast Aubergine Associates, Jeff Larson and Dana Jones of Wells Fargo Financial Advisors, Bonita Productions and Bonita Natural Studio, HEB in celebration of National Poetry Month, the award-winning Becca Vineyard, Griffin Asset Management, Pasha Mediterranean Grill, and of course Angelica for the beautiful apartment in Berlin, and Becca and Periso's award-winning wines from the Hill Country, Alamo Heights Dental, Julie's Hair Company, and the many world-famous and other devoted artists from the region who gave us their art. Thank you all, and thank you for your bid. Please visit the auction site one more time. We are running it till 8 p.m. tonight.
Thank you all. Wonderful. Everything. Ha! It was great.